So today, we're going to dive into two really powerful stories. One's ancient, one's brand new. But believe it or not, they both wrestle with one of the biggest questions we've ever asked ourselves.
And that question is, where does evil actually come from? I mean, think about it. It's so fundamental. We're going to tackle it by looking at these two fascinating stories that you'll see are shockingly similar.
Okay, so on one side, we've got a modern fable called The Parable of the Mountain Lamps, and on the other, the ancient, kind of mysterious Book of Enoch. Yeah, they're separated by thousands of years, but you won't believe how they tell basically the same core story.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to follow this pattern through 5 stages. The initial fall from grace, the big choice to come down, how knowledge becomes a curse, the birth of literal monsters, and then of course, justice from above.
All right, let's jump right in. Part 1, 2 falls from grace. Look, to really get the impact of a fall, you first have to understand just how high up they were to begin with. We're talking about a long, long way down.
So first up, from the parable, you have these beings called the Bright Keepers. Picture this. They're made of pure light. Their one and only job? Tend these silver lamps on a super high mountain, using this divine flame of truth to guide the world below. It was a sacred, constant, and totally hands-off job.
Now, over in the Book of Enoch, we find an almost identical group, the Watchers. These guys were celestial beings, part of a heavenly court, posted up on Mount Hermon. And guess what? Their duty was pretty much the same: act as divine guardians, watching over and protecting humanity from a safe, sacred distance.
So you see the pattern here, right? The key thing for both groups is this shared mission. They had a sacred, non-negotiable duty to watch humanity from way up high, totally separate. They were supposed to be guards on the wall, not players in the game.
And that, of course, brings us to part 2, the choice to descend, which begs the question, what on earth could make these incredibly powerful beings just walk away from a job like that?
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the temptation is different for each group. For the Bright Keepers, it was totally internal, emotional. Their divine light felt cold and lonely, and they started getting jealous of the warmth of the valley. But for the Watchers, it was way more direct, external, physical. They were just overcome with lust for human women. So much so that they made a formal pact to go down and get what they wanted.
But here's the thing. Even with those different reasons, it all boils down to the exact same world-changing choice: putting what they wanted ahead of their divine mission. They abandoned their post, period.
Okay, on to part 3, knowledge as a curse. See, this fall wasn't just about them physically coming down to earth. No, they brought stuff with them. They brought gifts, which turned out to be forbidden knowledge that would absolutely poison the world they were supposed to be protecting.
And when you put them side by side, it's just incredible. In the parable, that pure flame of truth, it gets twisted into a forge of ambition to make swords. In Enoch, the Watcher Azazel literally teaches humanity how to make weapons. The parable's mysterious potions are a dead ringer for the sorcery and astrology taught by the other Watchers. The message couldn't be clearer. Heavenly knowledge, when it's ripped away from its divine purpose, just becomes a weapon of mass destruction.
And all of this leads us straight to part 4, the birth of monsters. Because this forbidden mix of the divine and the mortal, well, it had a direct and frankly horrifying result: monstrous children. They were the living, breathing symbol of all the chaos they'd unleashed.
So in the parable, they're called the giants of greed. They're born from light and clay, and they just devour everything in sight. The Book of Enoch calls them the Nephilim, giants who bring nothing but violence and destruction. So in both tellings, these children are these unnatural, chaotic creatures whose very existence just shatters the natural order of the world.
But the Enoch story adds this extra, really crucial layer. It actually explains what happened after these giants, the Nephilim, were killed. They're hybrid spirits. They couldn't go to heaven. They were trapped here, on Earth. And these trapped, disembodied spirits became what we know as demons, the evil spirits that still plague humanity. It's a fascinating, direct origin story for that specific kind of evil.
Which brings us to our final part, justice from above. I mean, after all that chaos and corruption, you just knew it couldn't be ignored. A divine reckoning was not just coming, it was inevitable.
And there's such a perfect, poetic justice to the punishments. In the parable, the keepers get bound in the very iron they had forged. Think about that. And in Enoch, the fallen angels, who forsook the light,
are thrown into an abyss of total darkness. In both stories, the punishment fits the crime perfectly.
So at the end of the day, this judgment wasn't just about payback. It was about hitting the reset button. It was about restoration. You have a massive cataclysm, a great storm in one, the great flood in the other, that cleanses the earth. The fallen guardians are locked away, containing that source of corruption. It's all about God or the great king reasserting control and putting the cosmic order back in its place.
So what's the takeaway? Both of these stories, one ancient and one modern, are giving us the exact same timeless warning. And it's summed up so powerfully in this final line from the parable. Light without duty is a fire that consumes itself, and those who abandon their height to rule the dust shall eventually be buried beneath it. Wow. This story pattern sticks around for a reason. It taps into a really deep, fundamental human fear, that our greatest gifts, our greatest strengths, if we don't handle them with responsibility, they can become the very things that destroy us.